All right. Good afternoon, Facebook community. We are back with another meeting of Diverse Minds with Keisha Hamilton. I am your host, Keisha Hamilton, and I'm super excited to be with you all on our bi-weekly check-ins that we're doing. And I'm excited to bring with me tonight, Nicholas Buckingham. I should have asked you what's the best name to call you while we were off air. Is Nicholas okay?
Yeah, Nicholas is cool.
Nicholas is okay?
Yeah.
I thought about that just now. Like, why didn't I ask him? Anyways, though. Let's see. Share. And we are sharing. There we go. Okay. Let's see. All right. So again, thank you all so much for coming back for another meeting of Diverse Minds. On our show, we talk a lot about diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism. We're going to go over those definitions quickly because the whole heart of our welcoming series is so that we can get to know our guests and the amazing work that they're doing around the community, and also how we might be able to support them in their amazing work. Nicholas will kind of give us some ideas of ways we can support him at the end of this conversation, and we'll try to link those in the comments as well. But before we start that, we'll talk again, diversity, equity, inclusion. Diversity, we understand it to be our differences. We recognize that the surface diversity that we see would be our, skin tone, hair texture, height, who we love, all those types of things are diversity. But the diversity that we really focus on a meeting of diverse minds is the diversity of thought that we have, whether or not we have it, and how it impacts us, our ability to have diverse thoughts, to think differently than what we initially, grew up thinking. So we definitely think, like I said, about diversity. How are our thoughts different? How are they accepting of different thoughts? How are they, incorporating of different thoughts? So that's the diversity that we like to focus on. But again, it does not, eliminate the other diversity that we have, which is physical, lots of physical diversity. Equity. We recognize that equity is an acknowledgement and an awareness of barriers and actions centered around eliminating those barriers. We also say that equity is giving a person what they need in order to be successful, recognizing that everyone does not need the same thing, and equity is not fair in that. We realize that, I don't need the same thing that Nicholas needs, and he doesn't necessarily need the same thing that I need. And yet, whatever our needs are, equity is, it's the idea to give us exactly what we need, regardless to who gets what in that equation. We recognize that equity will lead us to a state of equality, which is what we're trying to get to, but we're not going to get there without equity. And again, equity is not fair. We've given examples before, and you're welcome to go back and look at some of our shows to see some examples of how equity would play itself out. But again, we're trying to get to the heart of our conversation today, so I won't spend a lot of time on that. Then we talk about inclusion here on a meeting of diverse minds. And we recognize that inclusion is having a seat at the table, specifically those policy and procedure tables. We recognize that inclusion is not simply being there like a skeleton just sitting at the table, or like a teddy bear in a little girl's tea party. It's actually having a voice in what is being created. It's actually having what is being created, that voice being incorporated into what's being created. It's so easy for us to say that inclusion is having people sitting at that table and then think that we've gone far enough, when in actuality, that is not the case. Me simply sitting at a table, my voice not being heard, my voice and my ideas not being incorporated into whatever is being created is not inclusion. Inclusion is me at that table, me giving suggestions, and then also incorporating those suggestions into whatever is created. Nicholas and I both share having been graduates of Just Leadership USA, and one of their sayings that they have, their motto is, those closest to the problem are closest to the solution, but furthest from the resources and power. In inclusion, we recognize that individuals who have been most impacted have the knowledge and the awareness of what actually is needed to be changed. And oftentimes those people are not at the table to create and change whatever's being created. So inclusion, again, having a seat at the table, and not only having a seat at the table, but being an important voice at that table, and then having that information incorporated into that space. We also talk about racism on a meeting of diverse minds. Racism is a prejudice against an individual based on their skin tone, based on their race, which generally, layman's term level, the foundational purpose of that, or reason for that, will be based on their skin tone. coupled with power. So we recognize that racism is not prejudice, it's not discrimination only. It is something that's coupled. It's a discrimination, it's a prejudice, it's a bias coupled with power. You have the power to act, and it's systemic in nature. Racism is not individual. So many people are, I'm not a racist, I'm not a racist, I'm not a racist. They're quick to do that. Racism is systemic, and it's structural, and it impacts large groups of people. We'll talk a little bit about more of that as we go along through tonight's conversation. All right, that was all the not as important stuff. We got Nicholas here. We want to hear from him. So let's talk about who our guest is tonight. So Nicholas Buckingham is the campaign director for Michigan Liberation, a 501c4 statewide organization that's dedicated to the leadership development of formerly incarcerated people and the creation of effective campaigns to advance racial, gender, economic, and environmental justice in Michigan. After having spent 7 years incarcerated and catching the backlash of the felony stigma, Nicholas decided to focus his attention on higher education and raising his voice for criminal justice reform. Born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, he's currently a graduate student at the University of Michigan School of Social Work and a recipient of the New Leader in African-Centered Social Work program. Congratulations. Nicholas is dedicated to dismantling the criminal legal system. I love that, criminal legal system. There's nothing just about, okay, maybe there's a couple things just about, I don't know. There's not much just about the criminal legal system. Okay, anyways, Nicholas is dedicated to dismantling the criminal legal system by shifting prosecutorial culture through community accountability boards. I got to watch a video after Worthy, after the campaign that you waged against Kim Worthy, and I thought it was absolutely amazing, a clip of you all. Anyways, I'm gonna finish reading this, we'll talk about more about that. In 2019, you led a tri-county, I guess this was probably a tri-county prosecutor accountability campaign, which engaged voters and prosecutor candidates to identify the issues and solutions in the community and the legal system. And you also, last thing, it's really not the last thing, but one of the last things I guess I'll mention is that you started the Michigan Black Mamas Bailout, which is a campaign focused on ending cash bail and the harms Black women face with the system. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for everything you do.
You're welcome.
For coming on the show, for being our featured guest. I'm so honored. Thank you so much for coming. All right, anything that I didn't share in there that you might want to touch on before we kind of start asking questions?
No, I mean, it's, yeah, people always ask me like, what do you do? It's a ton of stuff, and I always give like this little short version of what I do. I'm a community organizer that's working to dismantle the legal system. And sometimes like they go to Google me of my work and they're like, wow, you've done a whole lot more than just community organizer. But in the short sense, that's what I do.
Yeah, you know, when it comes to, and I'm always plugging Just Leadership, you know what I mean? Because I love them so much. But when it comes to Just Leadership, you know, the people you meet in Just Leadership who come out of there, or before they go in there, because we go in as leaders, you know what I mean? But, you know, it's always like you peel it back and it's like, well, hold on, wait a minute. There's a whole world of this person back there that I could have never known from this small door. Yeah, I'm a community organizer. No, you're so much more than a community organizer, you know what I mean? But Just Leadership folks, for some reason, you know, are just the best of the best. So it makes sense that, you know, you might say a community organizer, and then everybody's like, well, hold on, wait a minute, you're not just a community organizer. You are so much more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I can. Our trainer at that time was David Messon. I can hear his voice now. Like, don't label yourself just as a community organizer. You're so much more than that. You're a leader, you know. I can hear his voice in the back of my head now. So, but yeah,
he was amazing. I'm sad we had some good people in our cohort. You know, some great people who were you know, leading us. But I really was hoping to get David Mensa. He was absolutely amazing. But we did have some good people too. You know what I mean? I still feel like, you know, 2021 was the best cohort ever. You know what I mean? But you know, David Mensa was amazing.
Yeah, let everybody tell it they cohort was the best.
Always. So tell us a little bit, if you would, about Michigan Liberation. I think you co-founded Michigan Liberation.
Yeah, I co-founded. Are you hearing me okay? Are we static or anything?
Just a little bit we are.
Okay, yeah, if I feel like it's going, I'm gonna switch over to my phone.
Okay.
yeah, I co-founded Michigan Liberation. We started back in 2018. It was a group of us that's, longtime organizers and trainers. Been doing a lot of work here in Michigan and across the country. We were working with another organization, and we really wanted to design something just to focus on the legal system through a lens of abolition, community engagement, and like so much more, right? A lot around like healing. If we're going to say we're organizing formerly incarcerated and justice impacted folks, like healing has to be a structure, before the funding, before the actions, before the work, right? It's like, how do we heal as a individual, but then also how do we heal as a community while we're dealing with these issues? And so we piled up in my basement, and at some other folks' houses over stale pizza and flip charts, and we just started like taking a lot of our ideas out of our head and putting them on the wall and seeing what we come up with. And in a matter of like 30 days, Michigan Liberation was born.
Wow.
We decided to be a C4 rather than a C3, because we wanted that political arm, right? To have that ability, that capability of like building power. And I think a lot of people talk about building power, but what is really behind the notion of building power? And we knew for us, like organizing people has to be on the same level as organizing money. And if we want to see real power shift, we have to do this through a lens of like C4. Michigan Liberation is also a super PAC. And so, we had to do that as well. And one of the first things we did was like we got out in the community. In 5 weeks, we knocked on 30,000 doors in like three
Wow.
different counties: Wayne, Oakland,
Wow.
Kalamazoo. And we started just having conversations with folks right there on their porch about the legal system. What do they know about it? Have they been impacted? Do they have a loved one that's incarcerated? How do they feel about their police? The biggest question of all, what do you know about your prosecutor? And that was a question that, really pushed me further into the work, that there were so many people that did not know the role of a prosecutor. There was a lot of folks that didn't know your local prosecutor is an elected person, right?
Yeah.
Like this isn't a job. This is a commitment to community.
Yeah.
And it's not a commitment to the criminal justice system. It's a
Right.
commitment to community
Yeah.
first, because the community is the one that gets you in that position.
Yeah.
And I felt it in myself that, if we're going to take on this giant, right, this Goliath of what we call the legal system, the justice system, that we have to go for the strongest people, those playmakers. And the prosecutors and judges are,
Yes.
two of the strongest components within the system.
Yeah.
So, a lot of our work been based around prosecutorial accountability, and just pulling at the ways that we can engage the community to have that conversation and those direct actions to end the mass incarceration in Michigan.
Wow. 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 That's absolutely amazing. Um, 30,000 doors, three different counties, you know, talking to people about, the criminal justice system and legal system, and then also the prosecutor. Well, that's one of the things I think so I love criminal justice and have, for too long of my life, for a very, very long time. And when I thought to go back to school to try to figure out, what do I want to do with my life, I thought, okay, I'm gonna do the criminal justice system because I know I'll still be interested in it. And then I thought, okay, well, what am I gonna do with the criminal justice degree? Because what do you do with it? And one of the things I did was kind of research and find out about my prosecutor, and found out, for me, in my opinion, and you tell me what you think about this. Prosecutors are kind of like the gateway to everything. To me, they hold the most power,
Yeah.
to everything. And I love, 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 love how you describe them as a community-led position. So many times you hear, are you still there? Okay, looks like you're there. So many times we hear, when it comes to these court cases, it's the people versus such and such, you know what I mean? The people versus,
Mm-hmm.
and when we think about that, just as the way you described the prosecutor as being elected by the people, which we know, but then also because you're elected by the people, the people that you're actually here to represent are the people, not necessarily. And so many times our prosecutors are really representatives of the system versus the people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I love, love,
Mm-hmm.
love, how that was your focus, and how you educated individuals on that. I'm guessing that you had a lot of people that were kind of shocked and just,
I mean, yeah, you look at the results from the 2020 elections, and
Mhm.
we ran a prosecutorial accountability campaign at Oakland, Wayne, Washtenaw and Macomb County. We
Wow.
were able to flip two of those counties, so that was
Okay.
Oakland County and Macomb County. And we
Wow.
lost, and no, that was Oakland County and Washtenaw. We were able to win seats, and Macomb and Wayne we lost.
Okay.
And especially like in Wayne County, the one thing to really pay attention to is that we were able to gain about 41% of that vote. And so
Wow.
that, that goes to show um, that almost the majority of the constituents in Wayne County not only care about like their local prosecutor elections, right? But they also care about reforming or rehabilitation or abolition, right? They care about some form of change within the current criminal legal system,
Yeah.
and they're not, they're like, yo, what we have right now, they don't want to continue to see that, right? These
Right.
people, they came out and they voted for a prosecutor to reverse juvenile convictions, folks that was sentenced under the age of 18. I'm gonna say 21. Under the,
Hmm.
well, in social work we say 25. It's like how you
Hmm.
want to say,
Yes.
but we'll just say, people under the age of 18 that were sentenced to life in prison. People that were in prison for wrongful convictions. You had almost the majority of constituents come out and say it's time for a change, and the
Yeah.
way that we're going to get to that change is by electing a prosecutor that represents the people rather than the draconic system, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I love that. Just so much that you said in there. Even, just when you're talking about, flipping the counties and just the importance of that. I'm thinking about just you doing that 30,000, knocking on 30,000 doors, and just the education that you use basically to kind of, because I would imagine, not only are you engaging individuals who have come in contact with the criminal justice system, whether directly or indirectly, what I mean? You're also engaging most of these people who don't, like you said, didn't know the role of a prosecutor or even their role as citizens to hold these folks accountable. You know what I mean? So many times we, one, are not paying a good enough and close enough attention to our politicians and who we're voting for or not voting for. So we're not paying attention, and then we're also not holding these folks accountable. So I absolutely love that that was, part of the role in the process and the thought process around it. Let's talk to these people directly. Let's let them know who and what where, and let's let them know that you have a choice. You have an obligation, a responsibility. You know what I mean? Get out here and vote for the right folks.
Hmm.
One of the other things you mentioned in there, just that so many of the individuals you spoke to were ready for change. Recognize that this system's not working. What else can we do? I happen to have actually a conversation with a gentleman around the conversation of defund the police, which just kind of relates a little bit to, the whole criminal justice system, criminal legal system, and that whole, we need something different, we need something new. So I'm going to take the conversation just a little bit different here with this question. When we talk about even defund the police, we recognize it as being a reallocation of funds. I think initially the conversation was defund the police, and it still is to some degree. I don't necessarily disagree with defund the police because I recognize it and understand it as a reallocation of funds. But even in the conversations that you were having with these individuals who were ready for something different, were they acknowledging? Were they able to? What were their thoughts around defund the police? Was that a part of the conversation at all, or how did it come up in your
So
conversation?
yeah, no, that's a good question. So defund the police, that term actually came. It been around for, I don't know, probably about a year and a half, but
Hmm.
it didn't get publicized until after the George Floyd until after
Murder.
George Floyd murder, right? And so
Hmm.
this was in 2018 when we were out knocking on
Okay.
doors,
Okay.
and that conversation of defund the police wasn't there just yet. However, there has been conversations about invest divest, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The reallocation of funds and putting those funds into more meaningful places where they could actually do some type of service to the community, right?
Yeah.
And even with that type of conversation, you had people that were ready to engage into
Yeah.
like, how do we actually look at police department budgets, and then
Mhm.
how do we start to divert some of those funds into things that people will really want to see, right?
Okay.
And one of the education components for the community was, one, understanding what the police budget is, who
Yeah.
develops it, and who it's for. And so we started to have, education seminars for folks where they would learn like, oh, Oakland County sheriffs are spending, mad millions of dollars on a helicopter to keep it
Hmm.
in the sky, right? Like
Yeah.
it costs thousands of dollars to gas that up.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, people are asking like, do we really need a helicopter? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Right. Right.
But I think we like from there we can continue to go down that scale of, do we need militarized weapons? Do we need tanks?
Right.
Do the police officers need, high caliber assault rifles like
Right.
AR-15s and AK-47s and things like that? And so, it's not up to us as organizers to make that decision. It's up to the
Right.
community because
Yeah.
those are the taxpayers. And so, once they start to speak out, I think it's important that, the governments of those communities start to listen to those people. The other piece I'm gonna say is that what was a real shocker for folks was to understand Wayne County, right? We're talking about racism. Understand like the majority of Wayne County population is white. But when we
Oh.
look at the county jail, right, the overall majority of the folks that's locked up in the county jail are black. And so
Yeah.
we have to ask that real question, like, wait a minute, hold on. Why is the jails full of black folks when the county is overall white?
Yeah.
Right? Are we saying that white folks don't commit crimes? Are
Right.
white folks not guilty of crimes? Like, what is
Yes.
going on there? And so that also sparked off a conversation of how cultures inside the prosecutor offices between Oakland and Wayne County look, and how they look when it comes to black folks that's being impacted by them.
Mhm. That's so I love that. I love that, just being able to have that conversation because I to me when we talk about, especially specifically racism and really in anywhere, we got the education system, we got the criminal legal system, we got, just our businesses and, working environments. And it's always when we can look at those disparities, when we can look at, our county is predominantly white, we'll just talk about Wayne County, predominantly white, and yet our jails are full of black and brown individuals or just black, specifically, we know we always are overrepresented in those spaces. Then to be able to have the second part of that conversation, why? I mean, is it because you actually believe that we are, more uh, evil, or whatever the case may be, that, we're more criminal, or whatever. And then we have to have the conversation about what's criminal. You know what I mean? Then we'd have to, who's deciding what's criminal. You know what I mean? But so often we can't. Oh, you're muted. Go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is, it's that part right there, right, of
Mhm.
defining these labels.
Yes.
I think when an average person hears poverty, right,
Hmm.
crime, lack of resources, and then black. You get what I'm
Yes.
saying? And
Automatic. Yep.
so, when we have to really look back and say, what is crime and what is crime that really impacts a community? Because
Yeah.
right now, to be a person that's living with a mental illness,
Yep.
well, you're criminalized,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The biggest, mental health facilities in Michigan are your county jails and your prisons,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
We already know we've been seeing this for a very long time that to live in poverty, to be poor, is being criminalized
Yep.
now.
Yep.
And even like here in Detroit, with a lot of the gentrification that's going on, a lot of our generational homeless people that have been on the streets are now being removed off of the streets so that folks, developers can come into the city of Detroit,
Yep.
right, and not have this image of poverty in the areas that they developing. So they're
Yep.
not taking these homeless people off of the street and giving them houses. They're
Right.
not putting them up in hotels or anything, right? They're
Yep.
looking for ways to criminalize them and to charge them. At my last internship, I was doing some work with a homeless shelter, and there was a young man that was in there. He was just released from jail, and they took him to jail because he was they call it's like destruction of state property, destruction of city property, or something like that. But he was laying on a bench, that was like smack dab in the middle of nowhere downtown Detroit. And he said the police pulled up, asked him a few questions, they put handcuffs on him, then they, immediately escorted him to jail. And so again, right, we don't see this going
Right.
on in areas where the population is majority white, right? We
Right.
don't see this happening in areas like, Oak Park, or not
Mhm.
Oak Park, I don't want to say Oak Park, like Royal Oak, right?
Okay.
Bloomfield Hills, Birmingham, even going down towards like the Jackson area, right? I used to
Mhm.
live in Lansing for a while. You didn't see the homeless folks criminalized out there.
Mhm. Mhm.
But when you come into cities like this, they're criminalized. And it's important that we have these conversations outside of academia,
Mhm.
outside of the churches, outside of
Yes.
the legal system, and
Mhm.
with our people, right?
Yep.
When we say crime, what is that?
Right.
If I see my neighbor selling dope, right, I'm
Mhm.
not going to necessarily consider my neighbor committing a crime, but
Mhm.
looking into like, yo, you're doing this because you what?
Right.
Probably have to survive, right?
Yes.
Having to survive living in poverty. And so for
Yes.
me, it's like, how do I connect you with another
Yes.
resource that will
Yes.
take you away from this?
Yeah.
Understanding that if we talk about taking drugs away from the black dealers, we have to talk about what are we going to replace that money source with,
Yeah. Yeah.
because the overall majority are selling,
Yeah.
right, in
Yeah.
order to put food on the table to feed
Yeah.
themselves or
Yeah.
their families.
Yeah, it's this, and I'm so grateful that you even came on tonight and just having this conversation, because again, we have to define what crime is, who's being harmed in that crime, who decides it's a crime. And then even when we're talking to, so we're having these two different we have to have two different conversations. One, we have to have with the system, the structure and the system and how it was created. And then we have to have that conversation even with just among ourselves as Black folks, specifically, one, okay, why are you selling? We have to be willing to ask those questions and not operate like the system. Because so often we as Black folks, because we, just have taken in all this information from the system, that this is how you need to view this, that automatically we think, well, see, you need to be, jailed because you're selling. Okay, well, hold on, let's see. Why are you selling?
Mhm.
What's your reason? And that's the conversation that we don't get to have often enough. I'm really curious, even to because I think you said Wayne and a few other counties. Were some of them? Were you engaging mostly Black and brown people, or were you engaging white people as well?
Yeah, we were engaging. That was like the beauty of the canvas was, we specifically target those three counties: Wayne, Oakland, and Kalamazoo. Of course, Wayne County, we kind of figured what the responses would be from folks. It got really interesting when we got into Oakland County, right? These were your white Republicans. Some were
Okay.
Trump supporters, others weren't. But guess what? They were impacted by a
Yeah.
system, right?
Yeah.
And then when you go into Kalamazoo, looking into a more rural community, these folks as well was impacted by a system and asking, those same questions in regards to like, how do I get support? I have a family that's a family member locked up.
Yeah.
What resources and support is out there for them? So we didn't want to go in and just say, yo, let's just talk to Black folks, or
Right.
let's just go and talk to our Latino folks. We want to
Yep.
talk to people all across the spectrum,
Yep.
and
Yep.
really and see how this system has a play in an impact on these different communities and these different groups, right?
Wow.
So the race groups, the ethnic groups, the different classes, all of that played a role into how we wanted to develop campaigns over like the next really like 10 years. I'm
Okay.
going into 2024, so
Yeah.
2018 to 2024. My math ain't that great, but it's a long time. That's how we started developing a lot
Yeah.
of our campaigns and targeting the areas that we wanted to be in and what type of resources to bring to them, right? Like the resources that folks would need in Oakland County,
Yep.
man, that might not be the same resources Black folks in Wayne County and the city of Detroit need, right?
Right. Right.
Also in comparison to the folks in Kalamazoo. So it was important to mix that whole bag of folks up and have
Yeah.
that conversation.
That's absolutely beautiful. So I'm gonna come back to the just the Black folks in a minute, but I love that you were real intentional about hearing from everybody, or as many different peoples that you could, because when we get to talking like that, then we do find that we definitely have more in common than we don't, you know what I mean? And then we can find that
Mhm.
common area, how have you been impacted by the system, and how can we get you resources in that space? You know, and then how can we support each other? You know what I mean? What does that, what support look like? You know what I mean? If you were impacted, do you feel like voting for this same individual who, you know, sees the system in this way, who's harming your family members, your loved ones? You know, is it smart to keep voting for somebody that way? You know, and should we, you know, reconsider who we're, so I just love the, you know, the whole, you know, engaging different folks, because again, you know, it definitely shows how much more we're alike than different, you know what I mean? And how we're all really impacted negatively by the system. I think that's a part of the conversation that we don't get to have often enough, that, you know, even though Black and brown individuals are disproportionately, you know, more impacted, you know, we all actually are, you know what I mean? And we're not getting safer, or, you know, whatever safe looks like, we're not getting that based on what we're doing, and doing more of it is not going to get us, because we're just not getting safer. You know what I mean? You know, so we got to do something different, you know?
Yeah, you know, like, yeah, and I definitely, yeah, and I want to be clear about, you know, when we talk about everybody is being impacted, statistics and research and lived experience still proves that Black and brown folks are the most impacted, right?
Yes.
We are the ones that will, you know, we will be harmed the most when we come in contact with the legal system.
Right.
And even with bringing the resources into the community, you know, oftentimes, I see the internet, are we still there?
Yep, you're still there. I still have you.
Okay,
You have
cool.
me? Okay.
Y'all still got you. All right. Y'all, hey, look, everybody, y'all know how this Zoom thing go. Nothing new. We've been in 2 years almost. So, but you know, even with the resources, like oftentimes Black and brown folks are the last ones to get their hands on the resources that will really pull us out the hole that we didn't put ourselves in.
Yes,
right?
that part. That part.
This is something that's been here before our time.
Yeah.
You know, we have no control over, you know, when schools and stuff are shut down, or when jobs decide to leave an area. We don't have control over that.
Yeah.
So I sometimes feel like, you know, yes, people should be held accountable and not like incarcerated,
right?
But for the actions that they will do in the community, but also having this recognition that, you know, these are the circumstances that many of us have been forced to survive and live through, and there comes like a consequence that's placed on our backs, because we have to figure out the modalities to survive in the conditions that we didn't ask to be in.
Yes, yeah, I love that. I want to have more conversations so with specifically Black people, because, you know, we need to recognize that, you know, we've been dealt a hand that we had absolutely nothing to do with, and we're oftentimes just trying to survive within that hand. And yes, there is some accountability, some responsibility as to how we choose to, you know, survive in it. But a lot of times a lot of what, I won't say everything, a lot of what we do has been criminalized, you know, and so almost anything we do, not at all, but almost anything we do is criminal now. And now we're thrown into the system of the criminal legal system, you know, as a result of it, you know, but at the same time, we do have some accountability that we have to own, you know, but it's definitely a nuanced conversation, and it's two different conversations, you know what I mean? Because we were dealt this hand, you know. I just like, though, I love, you know, everything you're saying, but just really appreciate that you were able to engage so many different people, because it does show us that, you know, we're more alike as far as being impacted by it, while also acknowledging that Black and brown individuals are disproportionately more impacted by it, while being less of the community, you know, which speaks to the racism, you know, and capitalism that's within that system, you know, and even mass incarceration and how it all started, you know, it speaks to all that, you know what I mean? That's some good stuff. Yeah. So another thing I think I want to talk about, you talked about a little bit, you spoke about just the trauma of really, you know, so we can talk about the trauma of being incarcerated. We can talk about the trauma of just being Black folks living in, you know, society that was just not designed for us. And, you know, and then how we, you know, work to kind of exist within that space safely of our own accord. So self-care, you know what I mean? Want to talk a little bit about that as far as your work around social work and different things?
Yeah, we can definitely engage in that.
So I know you went into social work as part of, you know, because it was one of your ways of being able to cope with and you know, it's somewhat therapeutic for you. You want to just talk a little bit about that?
Hmm. Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of like a funny. It's not a funny story. It's like a serious story. But when I came home from prison, and I want everybody to understand, like, when I'm talking about my actions and all that, that's ripping the band-aid off of a wound that I'm really trying to heal from, right?
Yeah.
And I often let folks know throughout, this year will make 10 years since I've been home.
Congratulations. Welcome home too.
And going through like social work and everything, I come to like a real understanding that the crime that I committed, right? I committed armed robbery.
Mm-hmm.
Like that wasn't just an impact on my life. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not the only one that went through something, that went through some transformational phase, that went through a depressed. The folks that I've harmed
Yeah.
also were impacted by my crime, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes when we talk about criminal justice reform or whatever, we're so focused on the individual that committed the crime and what their trauma was like,
Mm-hmm.
and sweeping the victims under the rug. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I don't allow for my victims to be swept under the rug, but
Mm-hmm.
to actually, they're human.
Yeah.
And I've harmed them to a point where, you know, I know what I went through and what I have
Yeah.
to continue to wake up and think of and go to sleep and think of. And I wanted to engage in like a real way to heal.
Okay.
I got involved in social work after I came home 2012. I violated parole like my first 90 days. I went back to prison for 45 days. And on my 47th day, I actually walked out of prison the second time and I walked into my first college classroom.
Wow.
And people
Wow.
always ask me like, why didn't you do that the first time? Well, there was this window, right, until the next semester has started.
Okay.
And you know that saying, "An idle's mind is a
Yeah.
devil's playground."
Yeah.
Well, that's what was happening from when I came home in August all the way until January. It's like, oh my God, what do you do?
Yeah.
But anyway, I had a job and everything. I ended up losing a job because of the felony background. And my parole officer, the only thing she was like worried about was me bringing the money to the office. And
Yeah.
I didn't know how to
Sadly.
do that without a job, right? And I didn't want to tell her I didn't have a job because I didn't want to go back to prison.
Yeah.
And so, started selling weed. I
Yep.
wasn't smoking anything. I was just selling, getting the money, and paying my parole officer. And one day they decided to make an unannounced visit to my house where they will find a bag of weed laying on the couch, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
anyways, fast forward. I come out of prison that second time. I walk into my first college classroom. It's a math class. I'm super late. I was having a conversation with the professor. It was a black woman. And she asked me, she said, what is your interest of going into academia? And I told her I wanted to be a psychologist. I wanted to go and study human behavior and know
Mm-hmm.
how, why do we act the way that we act, all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And, I started telling her a little bit of my passion about wanting to help with people, right?
Yeah.
That, were impacted or walking down the same path as myself. And she stopped me and she said, yo, don't take up psychology. And I'm like,
Okay.
what? And she's
Yeah.
like, don't do psychology because with your felony background, you will never be able to get a license to practice psychology in the state of Michigan. It will be
Okay.
$100,000 down the drain. And then
Wow.
she
Okay.
said, instead, what you should do is take up social work. And I'm like, social work? What? And again, she's like, you seem like the type of person that's willing to jump in the hole with somebody and help them out, even though neither one of you have a way out that hole. And I'm like, well,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that I've been there, I've done that.
Yeah.
And I jumped right into social work from
Okay.
in a community college and worked my way up. And all of the things people were telling me, oh, you need to go get therapy, you need
Mm-hmm.
psychological help.
Mm-hmm.
Incarcerated people need rehabilitation, and we were not being
Yes.
rehabilitated.
Yeah.
So, I was able to find all of these, I was able to find all of this through social work.
Okay.
And the more I was getting engaged into social work and recognizing one, my own identity,
Yeah.
who I am, my purpose, in this
Yeah.
lifetime, I started to come to understanding like, yo, this is what I really needed.
Yeah.
This has been the most healing for me, that I
Wow.
can acknowledge myself, I can acknowledge others around me, I can acknowledge my own actions and toxicity.
Wow.
And then like start to put action to correct a lot of my ill ways and my behavior. So
Yeah.
that's like social work has been that. It's
Yeah.
opened up many doors
Yeah.
and opportunities. And of course, I'm one to always say, when people ask me, what do our children need today, I think
Mhm.
about what I have now,
Yeah.
and that's exposure, right? And
Okay.
so social work, going through academia and everything, has exposed me to so much and to so many people, that now this is my healing community, right?
Okay.
The
Yep.
School of Social Work, U of M, Oakland University, this becomes my healing community. And sometimes
Mhm.
I can feel it. When I graduated with my undergrad and I took those couple years off, I felt out of place, right?
Okay.
And it's like I have to get back into academia and get more of the resources, not just to help other folks, but to
Mhm.
help myself as well.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I think about, so at different times I've mentioned even on Meeting of Diverse Minds that this space, just being in this space with, specifically Black and Brown individuals who kind of live this life. We all live this life, from different spaces, different, just we have our different, the different spaces that we're in and we're living it. Just being able to talk and share experiences and share outcomes and outlooks is very therapeutic for me because it's like I'm not the only one here. I need to know I'm not the only one here. And for me, that's therapy, knowing that I'm not the only one here,
Mhm.
which is why it's so important for, those of us, even as Just Leadership, their motto is those closest to the problem or close to the solution. And that's for anything, we talk about, our students, and I know you did some work in, I forget what it's called, the Nehemiah House youth mentoring, I think you said when you initially came home, you were working on that with youth mentoring, at-risk students. But part of that is, you, because of the life that you lived, you're the best person to talk to, students who live the life like you, and you're the best person to say, look, these are the things that helped me, and, we've kind of surveyed
Mhm.
individuals like us, and these are some of the things that help us, me, I'm a mother, and I have all these different other hats and things that I wore, and wear even now. And I'm the best person to talk to that community, whichever one it is I'm affiliated with, to say, these are the ways that and I know we need to have it. And I'm grateful, because nowadays, even in our Black and Brown community, we're more open to, therapy. We're more open to the term therapy, because for so long, you're going to get therapy. Okay, you must be crazy, or, it's just, it's taboo. For
Yeah.
so long it was, and now it's not,
Mhm.
you know. I'm grateful that more of us are willing to say it out loud, to, yep, I go to my therapist so often, I seek therapy in these different ways, and just that conversation is being opened up, because our community needs it. We deal with so much harm, you know, so much harm
Yep.
dealing with these folks, that
Mhm.
we need us to be saying that out loud, get your therapy and figure out ways. I mentioned even before we got on, one of the things that, Hakeem mentioned, Hakeem Crampton, one of the things he mentioned about
Mhm.
therapy was for him, working to dismantle systems was a part of his therapy, working to address and to confront, and, was part of that healing space, and I find for myself as well, when I see issues that are there, my therapy is in, okay, how do I educate on this issue? How do I gain support? How do I build support? And how do we attack this issue? But yeah,
Mhm.
I really appreciate that could even, that you're, making that known, putting that out there, the therapy that we
Yeah.
need.
Yeah. Yeah. That for me, that's important in my line of work,
Hmm.
because I'm serious about organizing formerly incarcerated folks, right?
Hmm.
And I know what was taken away from us in
Yes.
the Michigan Department of Corrections, right?
Yes.
Those rehabilitative programs are gone.
Yeah.
Those
Okay.
educational programs are gone, right? And so you have so many men and women that are incarcerated, and they're just there. And it's
Oh,
like, how do you work on yourself when you're isolated, you're locked away, you're in a cage, there's depression and stress
yeah.
all around you.
Yeah.
You have to constantly think of how you're going to survive in in this environment.
Yeah.
And then you also have the prison staff, right? Like,
Yes.
you have to protect yourself against them. And that right there alone is a lot of pressure that you put on your body,
Yeah.
right? It's a lot of pressure that is turned into trauma, and that trauma lives within our body, right? And
Yes.
I have this funny joke. I say, like, look at a lot of us that come out of prison. our backs hurt, our legs hurt.
Yeah.
And we're like the most fit people. We were eating okay, we were working out. And it's like, why
Yeah.
your back and your legs and your body hurt this much? That's
Yeah.
how much of the trauma is just living
Yes.
inside of our body,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And not having like exercising isn't always going to get this out.
Yep.
Eating healthy diets isn't always going to get this out. We
Yeah.
need a doctor of the mind, right?
Yes.
That can help us patch together pieces that has even either been broken, shattered,
Yes.
or they just
Yes.
haven't been placed there, right? And that
Yes.
doctor of the mind can help us put a lot of these things back together, especially coming out of prison.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think normalize, like we just have to make it a normal thing, especially amongst like our children today and our older adults. When I say older
Hmm.
adults, 40, 50, 60 years old,
Hmm.
like let's get off our stumps. We need therapy too,
Oh yeah.
right? Because we were just as damaged as,
Oh
we
yeah.
can't talk about anybody else.
Oh yeah.
So, we have to just normalize a lot of that into our languages nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I really appreciate that too. Even just, and I think a lot of us, just specifically, so, we talk about, our formerly incarcerated individuals and those who are incarcerated as well. And the trauma, that's like a concentrated version of just all the pain and, racism and just stress. And I mean, it's a very concentrated space. And so there's definitely, a need to be very intentional about saying, hey, look, let's go get a doctor of the mind. Let's figure out how to, get all these things back together. You know what I mean? But then even just expanding that conversation to Black folks outside, the concentration is not as concentrated, but it's there. And we all need to be, in some type of therapy, not only with the doctor, but then also, and I know for you, you created Michigan Liberation, and you, like you mentioned, you have the super PAC on there, and you created it as a 501c4, so that you could impact legislation. So not only get the doctor of the mind, but then, okay, now let's get to work together, changing this
Yeah.
so that the next generation doesn't deal with the same things we're dealing with. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I'm always trying to figure out how do we, how we, in biblical terms, how are we beating one thing and building at the same time? How we, let's do both of them at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. We got a saying in Michigan Liberation, we're building the plane while we're flying it. And so
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
how it's gonna go. And we're not, hopefully we complete the plane,
Yeah.
but as long as there's issues out there, that's all we can do is continue to build and fly.
Yes, yes, I love that. I think we're going to end on that. Building the plane while we're flying it. You know what I mean? How we doing both at the same time. Let's tear down some stuff, rebuild it, and then also be working with that doctor of the mind. So many in our community. I'm grateful that we're changing. You know what I mean? It's definitely changing. Thank you so much, Nicholas, for
Yeah,
coming on
absolutely.
tonight. Thank you, thank
Oh
you, thank
yeah.
you.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the conversation. Enjoyed all the nuggets that you have given out for us and for our community, around organizing the different groups to engage in that organizing, campaigning and how to, hold prosecutors accountable, whatever campaign you're working on, but just how to kind of do that. The importance of, therapy and self-care, the importance of doing the work as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Any last thoughts that you might want to share with the audience? How they can find
Yeah,
you or
I don't
anything?
think we didn't touch on this, but I started a program called the Michigan Black Moms Bailout,
Yes.
and essentially it was centered around Mother's Day to bail out as many Black moms, bring them home, connect them to the resources in their family.
Yes.
And since then, we've been able to actually expand our work
Okay.
beyond Mother's Day, right? And we're always doing a fundraiser. We don't take any corporation dollars.
Okay.
However, like this is a community effort to understand what the cash bail system does to Black communities. And the
Yes.
reason that we center the work around Black women is because this, Black women oftentimes are not spoken of when we do talk about criminal justice
Yeah.
work. And when we look at the research, the fastest growing population within our
Yes.
systems, especially in our county jails, are
Yes.
Black women.
Yeah.
And again, right, the most impacted
Yeah.
are Black women. So I
Yeah.
have a saying, and it goes, when we incarcerate a Black man, it impacts the household. But
Yeah.
when we incarcerate a Black woman, it impacts the community,
Okay.
right? And now that we're seeing this influx of Black women that are, not only are they being incarcerated, but they're also being killed by the police.
Yes.
I think it's time for the community to really rise up, understand and
Yes.
recognize what is happening, come
Yes.
together and unite on a common front, and really
Yes.
look at the ways that this system is harming not just the individual but the community as well. Like I said,
Yes.
when we lock up a black woman, it disrupts the community. And
Yes.
listeners, you can take that, reflect on it, think on it, sit on it, do your research on it, and you will see, just to go not to hanker on the past, right? They removed the black man out of the household and they
Mm.
replaced us with the welfare system, right?
Yep.
So when
Yep.
you remove that black woman out of the household, what are you replacing that black mom with,
Right. Right.
right? And
Yep.
oftentimes it's the community that has to figure out how we're going to raise this
Yes.
motherless child, right, or this parentless child. So
Yes.
the Michigan Black Moms Bailout, it's a campaign to end cash bail. It's a campaign to bring home as many black moms and connect them to the right resources to then navigate through the criminal court system. And then also like paying attention. Michigan has a lot of prisons. We have 36 prisons. There's
Wow.
only one prison. There's close to 50,000 people. No, let me take that back. There's close to 40,000 people incarcerated in Michigan. There's only one women's prison in the entire state.
Wow.
It is overcrowded, it is overpopulated. There's a lot of diseases and viruses that are going on in there that the women are screaming out and their
Yeah.
voices are not being heard. And so
Yeah.
this campaign is to uplift a lot of those voices and the harms and the ills that women are going through. The other side of the campaign is to crush the stigma that black women go through when we talk about felony disenfranchisement and being
Mm.
formerly incarcerated. And with this campaign, we try to highlight the human side of these black
Yes.
moms by
Mm-hmm.
sharing with the public who they really are and not what the
Yeah.
media would say. So, this isn't a campaign to lift me up. I try to play in the back scenes and empower everybody else to take it on. But if anybody get an opportunity, please check us out. Michigan Black Moms Bailout. We're on all social media platforms. We on Google. Make a donation. Check
Yes.
out our work. Get in contact with us. Volunteer with us. Work with us. Or support us. So just going to find people and bailing them out of the
Yeah.
county jails.
Wow. 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 Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's beautiful. I love that we did do, I think Hakeem did, he did a Black Mama's Bailout around Mother's Day. I think last year he did one. I'm not sure if he was able to do one this year or not, but I know that he was probably either working with you or, had some ideas and stuff
Yep.
from you regarding that. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's so important. I love that too, that you said, even when we take a black male out of the home, we're impacting, I think you said the individual, but the mother, now we're impacting the whole community, and we want both our moms and our dads in our homes, you know what I mean? So thank
Mm-hmm.
you. I'll either you can let the people know how else they can find you. I don't know if Michigan Black Mama's Bailout is the best way, or if there's other ways, or if we want to just link it in the comments, you tell me what's the best way so they can be able to support you in the work
Yeah.
you do.
Yep. Nicholas Buckingham.
Okay.
Very common. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. That's the name.
Okay.
I know this. It sounds very arrogant to say this, but you can also Google me. And that's not arrogant. I am
I
receiving my
Googled you today.
flowers. All right.
Right.
Yeah, I am
Right.
receiving my flowers. I am on Google.
Yes,
That
you
feels
are.
great. All right. So you can Google me, see all the great work. And Michigan Liberation. We have the website is My Liberation and My Liberation.
Okay.
All social media platforms, Michigan Liberation. If you send us a message, I control the face, all the Instagram and everything.
Yeah.
But if you just email us, there will be somebody to get in contact with you. I'm currently on sabbatical until
Okay.
next year. That's
Awesome.
the
Okay.
the, the pleasure of to
Yeah.
finish up my master's. However, I
Awesome.
will engage in some conversations and planning
That's
until
beautiful.
I'm off sabbatical.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. We talk about self-care. You definitely have to model that. So that's beautiful. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hmm.
Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you all for joining us for another meeting of Diverse Minds. This is Nicholas Buckingham. You heard all the different ways that you can reach out to him. Please look him up. Look up the Michigan Mama's Black Bailout
Yep.
and
Michigan
support
Black Mamas Bailout.
Michigan
Yep.
Black Mama's Bailout and support that. Also Michigan Liberation. And as Nicholas proudly stated, he can be Googled, and I did Google him today and found him. Google him and find him and figure out how you can support, donate to the work that he does. We appreciate you, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Thank you, Nicholas. I appreciate you.
Peace.
Bye-bye.